Yes, so we will continue with the address. So up till here clear, no, that when and how the address was given to the central character of the girl of the story. So she was given the address, Marconi Street, number 46, and her mother asked her to remember that address. Okay, so now we will continue. I had remembered it. No, now the girl, the daughter of Mrs. S, says that I had remembered it. So she says that I had remembered the address, but I had waited a long time to go there. So she did not, the war was over, everything was normalized, but she did not go there. She waited for a long time. Initially, after the liberation. Now here the liberation, see, liberation is in capital, and here it refers to the freedom. I was absolutely not interested in all that stored stuff, and naturally I was also rather afraid of it. Underline these two lines. So what information are we given? We are told that she's not interested in the belongings and the possessions of her mother, and now she was a bit afraid of it also. She didn't want to take, because now see, the story is about post-war and the pre-war. So before the war, things were different. Now after the war, things had changed. So she herself admits that she is afraid. Okay, she's rather afraid of it. Afraid. Now why she's afraid? She's telling us afraid of being confronted with things that had belonged to a connection that no longer existed. Very important line. Please underline. So the readers, we are told that she was afraid. She doesn't want to get connected and develop a connection again with those things which no longer existed. Why? Because see, all these things were related to her mother, and her mother is no more. So that is the reason she's saying that she doesn't want to reconnect with the things which no longer existed, which were hidden away in cupboards and boxes and waiting in vain until they were put back in their place again, which had endured all those years because they were things. So see how beautifully human emotions are described, and after the war, how it becomes difficult for the people to get back to normal. Now see, this girl who endured the war and she suffered, and then now her mother is also no more. So alone, how she is facing the world, that is the reason her emotions are coming out, and she is giving this explanation. She's telling us that she doesn't want it to reconnect with those things which brought back the previous memories. Okay, clear?
Yes.
Yes. But gradually everything became more normal again. So slowly, see, whenever we get hurt, suppose we get a scar, so a simple scar also takes time to heal. So similarly, what happened? Gradually things became normal. Bread was getting to a lighter color. There was a bed you could sleep in unthreatened, a room with a view you were more used to glancing at each day. And one day I noticed I was curious about all the possessions that must still be at that address. I wanted to see them, touch, remember. So what happens now? She informs the readers that gradually things became quite normal. Okay, and they could sleep properly. They could sleep unthreatened, means the situation was very normal. There was no need to be afraid of. And then she herself admits, underline from here, that one day I noticed that she became quite curious. See, we can say that we don't want to miss someone, but the memories keep coming back. So the same thing happened with her. She became curious about all the things, about all the possessions of her mother, and then she wanted to visit the address. Okay, again, see, the title has been highlighted, that the address, she wanted to go to that address and wanted to see the things, to touch them, to feel them, and to remember them. Now see, this is a human trait. It is a human quality that we always associate our memories with the things. Suppose you see your small childhood toy, automatically you will remember that, oh yes, that day I was crying, it was raining, my father bought that toy, so it is very precious for me. And it's not only with you, it is with all the human beings. We relate our emotions and feelings to certain things. So here again she says that she wants to visit the address, to see those things, to touch them and remember. Okay, in other words, she wanted to relate herself to those things. Okay, clear?
Yes.
Yes, then again the things she talks about, the story returns to the present, and then she says, after my first visit in vain to Mrs. Darling's house, I decided to try a second time. So she was now again very, because she wanted to see those things, remember it, touch them. She thought of giving it a second try. Now a girl of about 15 opened the door to me. I asked her if her mother was at home. So next time, Mrs. Darling was not at home, and her daughter, who was about 15 years, she opened the door. No, she said, my mother's doing an errand. No matter, I said, I'll wait for her. So the daughter of Mrs. Darling, informed that her mother was on a short journey to collect something on somebody else's behalf. And so the central character of the story, the girl, says, okay, I'll wait for your mother. I followed the girl along the passage, and old-fashioned iron Hanukkah candle holders hung next to the mirror. We never used it because it was much more cumbersome than a single candlestick. So now this is the very first thing she sees after so many years, and instantly she goes back to the memory lane, and she says that it is an old-fashioned iron Hanukkah candle holder, but it was so heavy and it was uncomfortable for them to use, so it was not used. And then she saw that it is also kept, that it has been kept there in that house. So that's how she started connecting herself with all the after seeing the previous things, she started connecting herself with those previous memories. Won't you sit down? Asked the girl. She held open the door of the living room, and I went inside past her. I stopped, horrified. Now, when the moment she saw the room in which all the possession of her mother was kept, she was horrified. She was terrified, because those things had some emotional value, and it was very nicely accumulated by her mother and kept and preserved. But when she saw those things in that house, it was very badly kept. So she was horrified. I was in a room. That is the reason she says, I was in a room I knew and did not know. Now, this line is also important, underline. Why she says that I was in a room I knew and did not know? She says that she was familiar with the things of the room, because those things belonged to her, but the room did not belong to her. So she was in a room where she knew the things, but the room was very much strange, and she did not like the atmosphere, the muggy smell, the stale, damp smell, and she was not comfortable there. I found myself in the midst of things I did want to see again, but which oppressed me in the strange atmosphere. So she says, she was longing to see those things, but the atmosphere was so strange, and the things were kept in a tasteless manner. So that became a repulsion for her. She became very sad emotionally, and she was very drained, because her mother had kept those things in a very proper way, in a very she used to arrange those things, but here it was kept in a very strange and tasteless way. So she did not like that. Okay. Or because of the tasteless way everything was arranged, because of the ugly furniture or the muggy smell that hung there. I don't know, but I scarcely dared to look around me. The girl moved a chair. I sat down and stared at the woolen tablecloth. I rubbed it. My fingers grew warm from rubbing. I followed the lines of the pattern. Somewhere on the edge, there should be a burn mark. that had never been repaired. So she sat there, and then she saw the tablecloth and she followed the pattern. And then, because again all these things brought back her memories, so she remembered that the tablecloth had a burn mark which never got repaired. My mother will be back soon, said the girl. I have already made tea for her. Will you have a cup? So the girl says that anytime my mother can be back, I have made tea for her. Would you like to have? And she says, thank you. I looked up. The girl put cups ready on the tea table. She had a broad back. So now she little bit started noticing the girl. The girl too had a broad bag just like her mother, and she was arranging the table for the tea. She poured tea from a white pot. All it had was a gold border on the lid. I remembered she opened a box and took some spoons out. That's a nice box, I heard my voice say. So when she was arranging the table for the tea, the girl opened the tea box, a box, and then the girl, the central character, she could hear herself speaking. She's talking to herself saying that what a nice box. It was a strange voice, as though each sound was different in this room. So now from here only you can realize that she's not much comfortable. Oh, you know about them. She had turned round and bought me my tea. She laughed. My mother says it's antique. We have got lots more. She pointed round the room. See for yourself. So she is just, the girl is Mrs. Dorling's daughter is also showing her things, and she's sitting there not very comfortable, looking around and watching those things. I had no need to follow her hand. I knew which things she meant. I just looked at the still life over the tea table. As a child, I had always fancied the apple on the pewter plate. So again, she is those past memories start. She recollects those memories, and then she says that she had when she was a child, she used to always fancy about the pewter plate. Now, pewter plate is a very thick gray metal plate, and she used to when she was a child, she used to think about those things, and all those memories keep coming back to her. Okay. We use it for everything, she said. Once we even ate off the plates hanging there on the wall. I wanted to so much, but it wasn't anything special. So she is informed by that girl who is 15 years old, Mrs. Dorling's daughter, that they also use all these things, but she finds that the things do not have more value for them like it was for her and her mother. I had found the burn mark on the tablecloth. The girl looked questioningly at me. So she also found the burn mark on the tablecloth, and the girl was surprised. Okay, yes, I said, you get so used to touching all these lovely things in the house, you hardly look at them anymore. Okay, now see, this is also very important, you underline. So she tells, when the girl is looking at her surprisingly, she tells that we are so used to using things and touching them that we take them for granted. Okay, we only notice certain things when we miss them. Suppose you keep your bottle at a certain place every day to drink water. You will not notice the beauty of that bottle, how it is styled, what is the color. But suppose one fine day you lose that bottle, and then you will put your hand and look for the bottle. Then you will find that, oh, the bottle is missing. Then you will realize the worth of the things. Similarly, she says that we get so used to touching all these lovely things in the house that we hardly look at them. You only notice when something is missing because it has to be repaired or because you have lent it. So when we miss something when it is not there, when it is not present. And it is also true for human emotions. We realize the value of something when we cease to possess it. This is the ultimate truth of life. When you have something, we just keep on using it, or we take it for granted. But when we lose it or miss it or don't have it, only then we realize the worth of it. Okay, so that's what she tells to that girl. Again, I heard the unnatural sound of my voice. And again, her inner voice, her conscience, you can say, or maybe she's thinking, her imaginations, they are talking. She's again hearing the sound. I went on. I remember my mother once asked me if I would help her polish the silver. It was a very long time ago, and I was probably bored that day, or perhaps I had to stay at home because I was ill. And as she had never asked me before, I asked her which silver she meant, and she replied, surprised, that it was the spoons, forks, and knives. Of course, that was the strange thing. I didn't know the cutlery we ate of every day was silver. So again, she tells the girl about a childhood incident that once her mother asked her to, because she was at home because of an illness, so her mother asked her to polish the silver cutlery, and then she came to know that the cutlery was made of silver. Before that, she did not realize. Okay, clear up till here?
Yes.
The girl laughed again. I bet you don't know it is either. I looked intently at her. What we eat with, she asked. Well, do you know? She hesitated. She walked to the sideboard and wanted to open a drawer. I looked, it's in there. Now they both are talking, and the girl wanted to show her more of things. But then it was enough for her. She just hesitated, and she just her voice asked her to leave the place abruptly. So I jumped up. I was forgetting the time. I must catch my train. So it was enough for her. She could not stand anymore. And she just told that, see, I'll miss my train. I must leave. She had her hand on the drawer. Don't you want to wait for my mother? No, I must go. I walked to the door. The girl pulled the drawer open, and I can find my own way. So what happened? She could not stand anymore. She left the place, and she could hear the girl open the drawer, and then again she could recollect about all those previous things that she and her mother possessed, but she left the place. As I walked down the passage, I heard the jingling of spoons and forks. And when she left the place, she could, because it was of metal, silver is a metal, so she could hear the ringing sound of the forks and the spoons, but she left the place. And then in the last paragraph, you will find, at the corner of the road, I looked up at the nameplate, Marconi Street. Again, the address is talked about. She left the place. She saw the address again, and it had been at number 46. The address was correct. So she says the address was correct, but I don't want to remember this address anymore. Enough of it. I just want to wipe it off from my memory. Then, but now I don't want to remember it anymore. Underline this line, that address was correct. She mentions the address, Marconi Street, number 46, but she doesn't want to remember it anymore. I wouldn't go back there because the objects that are linked into your memory with the familiar life of former times instantly lose their value when served from them. You see them again in a strange surroundings. So this is also important. She gives an explanation that she doesn't want to remember those things, any of those previous possessions which is related to her and her mother, because it was linked in her memory, but it was in a strange surrounding, and she was not comfortable in the surrounding. That is the reason she doesn't want to remember it again. She wants it. And also she becomes aware of a very big fact of life, that anything that is material we cannot carry with us all along. We have to leave material things. So she realizes this, and she thought of moving ahead in life and forgetting about all the possessions that she saw at Mrs. Darling's place, because she finally realizes that we all are mortal, and these materialistic things cannot be taken everywhere. So it is better I should disconnect myself from these things and move ahead in life. So it is a very subtle and a very soft, but a very, at the same time, a very heavy piece of work, where human emotions are discussed, that how a girl travels in the past and wants to reconnect with the things that was a very favorite possession of her and her mother. But then when she finally sees that then she decides to forget about it altogether. Okay. So she says, and what should I have done with them in a small rented room where the sheds of blackout paper still hung along the windows and no more than a handful of cutlery fitted in a narrow table drawer. She also has another aspect for it, because now at present where she's staying is a small room and she could not accommodate all those things. So she explains herself in two ways, emotionally and practically. Emotionally, she says she understands that I cannot take all those things that is related to my memories, and practically she tells us that it is not possible because the apartment in which she is staying presently is not big enough to accommodate all these things. And then the last two lines, please underline, I resolve to forget the address. So she promises herself that she will forget the address, and of all the things I had to forget, that would be the easiest. So she assures herself and she promises herself to forget the address. So at last also we are reminded about the address. That is the reason story is titled as The Address. Okay, Vidhi, is the story clear to you? You have understood?
Yes.
Any questions to ask?
No.